Hello and welcome to this edition of Arlington Public News. I'm Michelle Marino. Paul Werlin is away this evening. At Arlington Public News, we present issues of interest to Arlington and surrounding communities. In tonight's newscast, we look at an organization that counsels and empowers women. We speak with activist and author Alice Rothchild about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and we discuss ways that parents can support adolescents dealing with high levels of stress. Plus, a reminder to submit your July photo of the month. These stories and others coming up next. Please stay with us. Hurricane Arthur has swept through New England, leaving many communities damaged by fallen trees, limbs, and debris. Arlington's Department of Public Works has been systematically collecting downed limbs on public streets and sidewalks. The town is asking residents to report damage to streets or trees by calling the DPW at 781-316-3301. For tree removal on private property, residents should contact a professional tree service. APN is excited to introduce World in 60, a new series presented by news intern Akriti Jagmohan. Each segment will cover local, national, and international current events in just 60 seconds. These news highlights will be updated twice a week to track dynamic and rapid changing situations in your community and around the world. Visit World in 60 on the APN website each week to stay informed about the latest breaking news and look for the hashtag WorldIn60 on Twitter. Numerous women face issues of domestic violence, sexual assault, abuse, and discrimination. APN presents this profile of the Women's Center, an organization that provides resources, support, and healing from these traumatic experiences, and also offers programs and counseling to empower women. The center promotes women's rights and challenges attitudes that devalue women.
The Cambridge Women's Center is a local nonprofit that provides a safe space for all women. It focuses on fighting for women's rights and against all forms of oppression. Katie Heimer, the center's coordinator, sat down to speak with us about programs offered and feminism in today's society.
It was founded by a group of women who basically were beginning to talk about issues that affected their lives and had been through various experiences with abuse and trauma, and were looking for a safe space to meet and talk with other women about their experiences. And at the beginning, for the first couple of decades, it was entirely volunteer run, entirely volunteer staffed, and to this day, I'm the only full-time staff member. We're a very grassroots, volunteer-driven organization. We have everything from arts and movement classes to support groups, discussion groups on different topics, and we're constantly looking for new areas to expand into.
So I know that you yourself have a background in media literacy and, sort of the women's movement as a whole. And I personally have noticed that, the word feminism has been coming up a lot more in the media, more so this past few years than I've really ever noticed before. What do you think of that? Do you think that's a positive thing?
I think it is. I think dialogue is never a bad thing. I think that there does seem to be, I think what's come out of that is that it sort of uncovered the fact that there's a lot of confusion about what the word feminism means. And I think that, those are good conversations to be having. They're good public dialogues to be having. And, I think that one of the biggest tasks for all of us that work within the women's issues fields is to figure out ways to demystify feminism, to make it as inclusive as possible, and to make people understand exactly what it's about, and that it's not about exclusion but inclusion.
So in terms of the media and the way women are sort of represented in the media through all mediums, whether it's television, film, print, advertisements, etc., what have those changes been like over the past 5 years, say?
There's still a lot of sexism in the media. That remains true, but I think one of the positive things that I've seen, and I think that other people, in the media literacy world have seen, is that, again, there are just more conversations happening about it. And what that often translates into is that, I think in the world of social media, in the world of kind of the whole online realm, consumers have the power to find each other and express their displeasure to advertisers, and advertisers listen to that.
So how could people who are interested in volunteering get connected with you guys?
Our website is cambridgewomencenter.org. You can go to there, download a volunteer application, and email that to me, Katie@cambridgewomencenter.org. Also, just come into the center, give us a call, get in touch with us any way that makes most sense for you.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking with me. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah, great to talk to you.
I'm Hannah Perlmutter with Arlington Public News. Thank you for watching.
Arlington Public News continues with our series on the struggles and challenges of adolescents. Part 5 focuses on the stressors in the lives of teenagers and the symptoms and illnesses that can stem from stress. News producer Peter Bermudez brings us this story.
Today we address the stresses our children face, as well as the symptoms and illnesses that can manifest as a result. With that, joining me again is licensed social worker Laura Stamboni, and for the first time, Andrea Rozzi, a social worker at Arlington High School. Welcome.
Hi, thanks.
Please, actually, just to give us a sense, what do you do in Arlington Public Schools?
As a social worker, I work in the guidance department. This is different than in other districts. Most districts don't have a regular education social worker, so I really have a broad job where I'm able to support any student who needs it. Most are regular ed students, sometimes special education students, and they could have any sort of issue of adolescence that we'll talk about today.
Let's start with the list of common adolescent stressors that's up on the screen now.
So, in referencing some of the stressors that are up on the screen, in Arlington High School's 2011 results, 38.3% of all respondents report they feel like they are under too much stress, most of the time or always, with the greatest incidence of this experience being grades 11 and 12. It appears almost twice as many females as males, so 47% feel this way in females compared to 27% of males. And what caused the greatest amount of stress was homework, which is 48.9%. Regarding the middle school results, what was interesting was that for the most part, it seems that with each year from 6th to 8th grade, students report increasing distress about self-image, specifically fitting in, worry that they are not good in anything. Gender difference is more frequently reported by females than males in terms of the differences in how they report. And being under too much stress, with about a quarter of all respondents being under too much stress or pressure most of the time or always, and that's more reported by females than males again, and that the sources of greatest pressures are teachers at 29.5%, themselves 26.1%, and parents 15.5%, which I was surprised by that. I thought parents would be higher on the list.
Now you see things differently, probably at the high school, although certainly some similar. But you have a very different milieu than Laura does in her private practice. Andrea, how are you seeing the pressure to excel sort of play out at Arlington Public Schools?
Well, I think there's a lot of pressure, like Laura said, on students to sort of think about college and think about the future really early. One of the parts of my role is to coordinate what's called the Transitional Program, which is a program for students who are behind in their classes and may have been out of school due to an illness, and often it's an emotional struggle like suicidality or depression or an eating disorder, that kind of things. And we're seeing more and more students in our program who are stressed and overwhelmed from taking too many AP classes. It sort of leads to these sort of symptoms. Like Laura said earlier, there's a little bit over 38% of students at the high school report they're stressed all the time. I think people are also really surprised to hear that 13.8% of students have reported feeling suicidal over the past year. So we have high achieving, sort of like A+ level students who are feeling suicidal and end up being out of school and accessing our program. It's a really sort of high performing, high functioning teenager who just sort of gradually is falling apart. We end up with seniors who are home in bed and missing lots of parts of the year and accepted to many colleges, good colleges, and just having trouble functioning and risking not graduating, that kind of thing. It's really sad to see.
What can we be looking for? What red flags might present themselves if our kids are having a hard time?
Sure. Well, I think our main concerns we've talked about today are anxiety and depression, and suicidality can unfortunately come along with that, and eating disorders. These are huge topics. You can sort of learn more about it online, but the main things I'd be looking out for are sudden change in mood, really erratic, angry behavior, tons of sleeping, lots of weight loss or change in eating patterns, change in friend groups, dropped in grades, just any stark change that you haven't seen in your adolescent, I'd talk among the family and seek some help.
Right. And do we engage them directly? Is that a time at which we go a little bit further, probe a little bit maybe?
I think so, in a non-judgmental way, as you said before.
I think so too, and especially anxiety, depression, suicide. If you sense or think that your adolescent's suicidal, ask them directly.
The challenges our children navigate through adolescence are significant and numerous. We hope the information we've provided not only sensitizes you to some, but also offers guidance and resources should you want or need to find out more.
Dollar Sense is a series that examines the agencies, institutions, and mechanisms that make up our financial system. This week, the topic is banks, the role they play, how they're regulated, and why we need them.
Hi, and welcome to our newest installment of our series, Dollar Sense. In this series, we seek to shed light on the institutions, the practices, and the dynamics that make up our financial system, both local and global. And to help us through this thicket, we are again going to be relying on the expertise and knowledge of Joe Camargo with Platinum Wealth Partners. And Joe will continue to serve as our guru as we explore our financial system. And I don't know, when I think about dollars, I think about banks. So let's talk about banks today.
Sure.
And specifically, we're all familiar with walking into a bank or writing a check, et cetera. What is the purpose of our local banks, really?
Well, in its simplest form, a bank is a facilitator of capital and currency. What does that mean? It's a place for someone to take their hard-earned money and deposit and hopefully have the bank safeguard the savings. It's also a place where we can all go and apply for a loan if we happen to need capital for a purchase of an automobile or, of course, the house, the mortgage. So those are the two basic functions that the bank, again, in its simplest form, strive to maintain and meet.
So, I mean, if I, as a worker, I end up hopefully with a little bit more money
Sure,
than
yeah.
I'm spending at the end of each month, that's
Right.
what everybody's aiming for. A bank, as my father would always have said, would have been the place to put that. Is that the same kind of viable alternative these days for my savings? Can I expect them to grow in the bank? Or
Excellent question. The way I would answer that, at least initially, would be, and we kind of have to talk about interest rates on some level. Banks traditionally will pay you a certain amount for holding your funds with the bank, right? So what they're doing is they're paying you for access to your money, and typically, well, it's interesting right now, but right now, to answer your question directly, the traditional savings account or money market pay almost nothing because interest rates on a national level and in fact on a global level are at historic lows. So the days where you might go to your local bank and receive 7 or 8% on a savings account or a CD, those days we're not there quite yet. So again, right now a bank is not a place where you might consider to grow your savings. It's more of a place to kind of park your savings, receive perhaps some safety of principal through the federal government, through an FDIC sort of program.
we look forward to tackling the next issue the next time. We'll see you then.
In part 2 of our look at the National History Day competition, youth producer Gayatri Sundarajan continues to follow 2 Audison students who participated this year. The contest requires secondary school students to engage in a year-long historical research project and present their findings in a paper, an exhibit, a performance, a documentary, or a website.
Hello, this is Gayatri Sundarajan here with Mrs. Sansinidro to talk about the National History Day competition. So what is National History Day?
So National History Day is a club that we run at the Audison Middle School, and it is connected with a national academic competition that asks kids to research a project that's connected to an annual theme, and then they present their project in a regional competition against other middle schools.
Can you describe the National History Day process?
Well, first you go to your first meeting and you kind of like formulate a little group with your friends or whoever you think you'll work best with.
You don't have to think of a thesis right away. You have to do some research before you make a thesis, of course, because you have to have some background knowledge of that.
That's basically up until like the last month, and the last like half of maybe January and all of February, you'll be spending like making your project.
How is this competition different at Audison than different schools?
So what's really unique about the Audison program and something that Mr. Levy, the other advisor, and I really enjoy about it is that it's a choice, it's an elective activity, where many other schools make it a requirement part of upper level high school classes. So as a result, we get really interesting topics and kids that just really like history to join. And I think the end product makes us pretty competitive at the regional competition.
So why did you join National History Day?
I joined because I thought it would be an exciting learning experience.
I joined it because I've always really been interested in National History Day, and I saw other people compete in it, and it looked really interesting.
So what was your project topic?
Our project was on Eisenhower and how he altered the course of D-Day and World War II.
My project was Lithuania after World War II. Our thesis was that after World War II, the Lithuanians who were deported, even though they went to different countries and they began to adapt some of the customs of different countries, they managed to maintain the Lithuanian national identity.
How does the skills taught in National History Day complement those at school?
I think it's a great complement because in the middle school, kids are introduced to the research projects and the process itself. And in National History Day, we allow those students to get deeper into the pieces and parts. We work really hard on the thesis statement. It's something that the kids have to defend orally to judges. And as a total, we've had almost 125 kids pass through the program in 3 years. So it's been great, and I think it's great for the kids to have something to do that's academically challenging after school.
So what was an important skill you learned?
I learned how to manage my time better because I was not expecting how much work I would have to do in the last week.
I learned how to make a bibliography because I didn't know how to do that before, so that was really helpful.
What is the goal for this program in the future?
We'd like to see it continue to grow, although we have so many students, we're not really recruiting at this time, but we've got some ideas of perhaps holding an Audison-based National History Day competition, have judging going on at the school, and then sending the top teams to the regional, where currently we send all the teams that are involved. So as the numbers continue to go up, that's something that we're thinking about doing, which would be great for the school, for the teachers, and the other students to come down and celebrate the projects.
Thank you so much for joining us to hear about the National History Day competition.
Alice Rothchild is a physician, author, and activist who recently co-directed a documentary discussing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Rothchild has dedicated much of her energy to better understanding this pivotal relationship in the Middle East and shares with us her perspective on both the past and future for those involved in the generations-old conflict.
At the very mention of Israel and Palestine, many of us either bristle with the frustration and anger born of hardship and loss, or glaze over, already lost in a swirl of historical fact and conjecture. Perhaps because of those very reactions, and most certainly because the Regent Theater just premiered a powerful documentary about these two Middle Eastern neighbors entitled Voices Across the Divide, we turn today to a conversation about Palestine and Israel. Joining me is Alice Rothchild, a physician who long ago turned her healing efforts to these two peoples. Whether authoring the book Broken Promises, Broken Dreams, Stories of Jewish and Palestinian Trauma and Resilience, co-founding and now co-chairing American Jews for a Just Peace, or writing and directing Voices Across the Divide, Ms. Rothchild brings a healing voice and perspective to this generations-old conflict. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me. What were your earliest memories of what it meant to be Jewish in the United States at the time, and what it was that Israel was about?
So I think my earliest memories have to do with family. I had a mother who was a writer. She wrote about Jewish immigration and survivors of the Nazi Holocaust, Jews growing up in suburbia. All the stuff that was going on was her material. In terms of our relationship to Israel, we just thought it was a fabulous place. It was a place where there was going to be a country that would be a light unto the nations. It was a place that had sort of socialism and kibbutzim, and it was magical. So that was how my identification started.
Separate from that, of course, was the other side of the equation, sort of naturally evolving in Israel relative to Palestine. How did you, your family, your wider community perceive Palestinians and their growing claim to a homeland in the Middle East?
Well, first of all, there was no word Palestinian. They were Arabs. And we had no understanding that there was an actual lives and cities and libraries and institutions and a whole world that existed before the State of Israel. You know, I grew up with the land without a people without a land, and the Arabs was sort of an incidental annoyance that happened to get in our way. So they weren't a topic of conversation. They weren't a topic that was public in my community. It was just, you know, they were the enemy, and we were fighting them so that we could have a safe place to be, and that was the full framing.
Whether it be Israeli or whether it be Palestinian in Voices Across the Divide, your documentary, what was striking was the commonality in terms of, geez, I had never met a Palestinian. I had never met an Israeli. And that separation is essentially, you know, supporting our different perspectives of our history.
Right.
Yeah, and my sense would be that that's what you hope to encourage amongst audiences to Voices Across the Divide.
Right. I mean, it's very easy to hate someone you don't know that you think is the enemy. And this is true of all conflicts. So the first step is to say, okay, let's look this person in the eye and see who they are.
Sure.
And the thing that has really struck me is, first of all, that I'm so welcome in the Palestinian community, and that I'm like, you really going to welcome me into your house? I'm like the Jewish oppressor. My name is Rothchild. But people make a distinction between, you know, an Israeli soldier who's coming to take your kid in the middle of the night and this nice Jewish doctor who happens to show up on your doorstep and really wants to listen and hear. And that's good, because that means we're all retaining our humanity as people.
Practical efforts can people right here in Arlington take to try and affect policy, to try and shift how Israel and Palestine are talking to one another?
Well, I think there's a lot that people can do. The first thing is that people need to understand the history. So just getting educated, reading books, going to websites. I mean, there's a huge amount of information out there that is very accessible at this point. That is not only the predominant narrative that gives other people's versions of what happened.
In the end, our histories, no matter how illuminating or misleading, flattering or damning, are about the past. We, of course, are left with the mission of fashioning our futures. Our question, will they be separate and distinct futures, or might we aspire to a future that is shared? For Alice Rothchild, I'm Peter Bermudez for Arlington Public News.
The Arlington Farmers Market provides fresh, local, and high-quality food to the community. With vendors from all over Massachusetts, it offers a wide variety of produce and goods. The market was originally designed to ensure that elderly residents nearby could purchase fresh vegetables, but over the years has expanded to attract more vendors, goods, and customers. News intern Lindsay Kennett recently visited this Arlington institution and brings you this report.
Fresh baked bread, local wine, vegetables picked that morning, and more. The Arlington Farmers Market has provided fresh and local produce since its founding in 1997. Open every Wednesday from 2 to 6:30 p.m., June to October.
The advantage that we have in having been an older market is that we're really anchored by a lot of farms, because we started before having a farmer's market was sort of the thing to have in every community. So we're really lucky that we have just a wonderful array of farms.
With over 25 vendors, customers have many choices for high-quality goods, including homegrown mushrooms from first-time vendors, the Campanellas.
And what do you like about this particular market?
Oh, the crowds are great, actually. We've had a lot of support, a lot of people really liking the different, you know, mushrooms are kind of a different thing, and growing your own is certainly a different experience.
And it's a nice thing to add to what some of the produce vendors and the different farmers around here offer is our stuff can go great with their things in a stir fryer, in a soup, or all these different things, so we get to be a nice complement to who else is already here. So the customers seem to like that. The market manager is great. She's been really helpful and supportive. The other vendors have been excited to see something new. So it's been a good vibe, this market.
Market manager since 2008, Patsy Kramer explains that the market's success comes not only from the quality products, but from the community's loyalty and support.
So what brought you here today?
I love the farmers market. I'm an Arlingtonian, and I think it's wonderful that that they have the farmers market every week, and if I'm in town, I always make a point of coming.
And how do you think this market benefits the community?
Well, just that it's here. It brings everybody together, and it makes people aware of produce and products and people.
Originally started to help make fresh produce easily accessible to a nearby elderly home, the market continues to give back, donating leftovers to the Boston Area Gleaners, an organization that brings leftover produce to shelters and food pantries. Check out the market's website for information, directions, or some tasty recipes. Eat healthy, support local vendors and the economy, even enjoy delicious tastings. I'm Lindsay Kennett with Arlington Public News.
In the month of May, Arlington Public Art held its first outdoor exhibit of the works of 10 area artists at Monotony Rocks Park. An opening reception on May 4th gave spectators the chance to interact with the artists. Sculptures were set up around the park, allowing residents to view the various works in a natural setting.
This exhibit is called Art Rocks Monotony. It's obviously a play on Monotony Rocks Park, where we have this exhibit right now, and it is an exhibit of temporary public art. There are 10 exhibits, 10 artists are exhibiting their work. Half of them are from Arlington and half of them are from other places, including Medford, Somerville, and Maine. A call to artists was put out in November and December. This call went out to all over Boston, actually. We got over 22 submissions of artwork. And then we had a jury. We had 2 jurors. And out of those 23 people, we chose 10 of the artists. This is the first major effort like this that I know of in Arlington, in terms of having an exhibit that's on view for 3 weeks, day and night, left to the elements, left to the public to display public art in town. This exhibit is possible because there are a group of very dedicated volunteers who've worked hard to make this happen, and also we have gotten the permission and the blessing of the Parks Commission. Arlington Public Art is a committee that is part of Vision 2020, and we are a group of interested Arlingtonians who want to see more public art in the town.
I love art in the community. I love seeing artists work in the community. I love seeing it out where people can interact with it a little bit, and just love it.
If anyone wants to put a piece in our front yard, we're open for it.
Yes.
Well, anybody can find out about becoming involved, because it isn't just artists. We want all kinds of people who want to see more art in general in town, and specifically visual art that is free and that is not commoditized necessarily. In other words, you don't have to go into a gallery, you don't have to pay money to look at it, you don't have to enter a museum. It's just out in a place which is very unexpected, and that's the beauty of public art. And they can find out about it by going to our blog, which is arlingtonpublicart.blogspot.com.
It's time for July's Photo of the Month contest. This month's theme is Your Kids Enjoying Summer. Please submit photos of your children enjoying their summer vacations to our Facebook page, or email pictures to hannah@arlingtonpublicnews.org. You must submit photos by August 5th for your chance to win a $100 gift card to Flora Restaurant in East Arlington. The winner will be announced on August 7th. Good luck. Thank you for joining us this week as we explore local events and issues of interest. Check out our latest segments on the web at news.acmi.tv. Please join us next time for another edition of Arlington Public News. I'm Michelle Marino. See you next time.